Okay, so I just want to come with a quick video. This is a little bit to wrap up my my series about paternalism. So like a lot of people, if you can maybe if you have to watch the series about paternalism to get the context of this, I think to maybe to come to see with the angle I'm coming from. But I think that the actual I think that the value of modern what is the value that modern Western society and societies influenced by Western societies filters for and skews for and is designed to bolster is nepotism. That is just another way of saying excuse me that's another way of saying arbitrary preconceived pre-decided for advantage of the privileges that amount the privileges that amount to our opportunities to experience life, happiness, and enjoyment of health, and means of exerting of exerting our effort upon our interest and passion, and realizing what comes back from that in terms of challenge, suffering, and joy. That's conveyed along it comes across along advantage. So a lot of the modern society is heavily preoccupied with laws, but there's nothing more arbitrary than law, simply because, well, it's man-made, overlaid. A lot of people don't appreciate philosophy, like oh, what, we got a philosopher? Are you a philosopher? Oh, well, why don't you keep your philosophy to yourself? Yeah, why don't you keep your philosophy to yourself with your stupid laws and even your stupid values and mores, where you exert we're in a digital space where you can more or less upload anything, and digital is most people have the same access to information and spreading of information, more or less, generally speaking. But some people are allowed to express themselves and some are not. That's actually like another law. That's like a de facto law. But more so, it's just law is it's still philosophy. Law is still philosophy, and it's actually arbitrary and corrupt, because the standpoint and the premise is to chauffeur and marshal outcomes along a predetermined line. But that's actually not what nature is. So what would be the strongest society, the longest lasting society? You could maybe appreciate that in military terms. So we're coming out of the war in Afghanistan for the United States. The United States, I think a lot of the United States is not as economically sound as it would present itself, or even as it exists as. So you have a lot of debt, and a lot of arbitrary printing of financial games and fiat games that are not necessarily congruent to value. Is a lot of what society is. That might be actually what's unstable about this society, that plays out into the outcomes that are a function of that in the activities. But you do have a strong preoccupation and maybe a little bit of a wheelhouse. A wheelhouse is like your strong suit, and a penchant for violence and militarism as the nation understands itself. Now, the nation has been put to flight and routed. It's appreciated by at least two makeshift hit and run, appear, disappear, improvising armies. As I understand, the North Vietnamese army, or the Viet Cong, and then also different rebels in the Middle East, including Afghanistan, put American interests to flight and routed them, and at least handed them somewhat of a defeat. It would be appreciated. Is that for the pain and suffering and blood that the United States cost itself and those nations. The United States did not have a convincing victory that is something that could be appreciated, like in terms of patriotism or like propaganda. The United States did not have that in either the Vietnam or the Vietnamese. The difference between the Vietnamese and I'm not saying only the Vietnamese fought in the Vietnam War, or only some. I worked with a client that said you actually had Chinese influence in Vietnam. It's interesting, like, so, you know, I live in the United States, but you hear a lot about violence, but you don't hear about people on the streets with rocket launchers and landmines and like radio guided missiles that can shoot down a helicopter. Most people on the street don't have that in the United States, yet most people in the United States have more disposable income. It's appreciated than people in these other countries like Vietnam and Afghanistan. So how the hell do people that exist on less than $1 a day have rocket launchers and laser guided missiles without some type of support and a deeper gaming that would be appreciated? And then as a lot of those weapons are conceived by think tanks and masterminds of weaponry in the United States that are either located in the United States or share interests within the United States, how do they get them into the hands of these people? So it can be appreciated as just a deadly game. And I'm not saying that history as it's presented publicly is what the real history is, or that I even have a half a clue of what the hell happens or happened there. But as a bystander and a spectator, I can appreciate that some of the testimony and interviews I've seen of people from the and so you had more people at play in the Vietnam War. It's appreciated by a person I knew that I worked for as a personal care attendant who was of that generation. She said that you had a strong presence of Chinese presence, or maybe fighters in the Vietnam War that would make the country Vietnam more formidable than it would be without that. But that's a little bit of hearsay, and I can't confirm that with any sources, except for the testimony of someone I worked with in my community who was of that generation and was somewhat knowledgeable about things like that. But all I meant to say is that a salient distinction between the Vietnamese and the Western conventional forces, and also the Afghan people and the conventional forces, is that they did not have an outcome in mind. They were not playing for an outcome. They were playing for play. I've said in another video that might be the most daunting thing, is that if you had a romantic interest and you were in company of other people and you have your life together, your appearance together, your health, whatnot, but you have someone there that appreciates playing for the sake of playing, whether it's playing at romance, playing at life, playing an instrument, just play to play. Now, I'm not saying by any means that the Vietnamese or the Afghans were playing, but they were going full on, come hell or high water, come whatever outcome. That's how they feel about it. That's how they're going about it. And if they lose one or two or all of us, we're all still going. That was the standpoint, and that's actually that's significant tactically, because it's appreciated that, you know, okay, so you back someone into a corner, and what have they to lose? They're gonna fight differently. Also, you get two people into a skirmish or a firefight, and one of them does not care about losing, so they're not bearing all the armor to make sure that they have the outcome that they want, and they're lighter that way, and they can maybe move differently that way. You have another person that has an idea of an outcome in mind, and they want that. Now think about that. Like, so what does a car, what looks more awesome? A car on four wheels? Like, even say every once in a while you see a damn Humvee come through city lines, like an actual military outfitted Humvee on civilian streets. It's pretty awesome and formidable when you see something like that, a military Humvee. But it's not necessarily more awesome, and it's centered and square and safe. It's very safe, that thing for itself. It's very safe, a Humvee. But you see a motorcycle going down the street, and it's lighter, and it's having less of a predetermined outcome of arriving somewhere safe, the motorcycle. Yet the motorcycle may reach somewhere better by not focusing as much on a predetermined outcome as far as safety goes. So that's just a salient example of how the approach of a conventional force and a guerrilla force, for lack of a better word, an improvised force that has not awarded itself a victory or decided upon a victory, is formidable. So what's more formidable? Like a bunch of people training that have not been to a fight, and they're like, yeah, fuck them up, yeah, kill, yeah. They're already giving themselves the experience or the victory before going to work. And then you have some people that are on their knees praying, saying that we love our family, we love our land, and we're going to do what we must to honor what we love, which is love to us. What's more awesome going into a conflict, if you think about it? I'm not saying that one or the other is not more heinous or potentially painful or horrible, but what's more formidable?